I don't know how many of you have been in India, but it's a beautiful city with its own immense population and a high density living. And All India Institute of Medical Sciences, where I come from, is one of the most premier institute over there, which caters to a lot of patients. If I have to show to you the kind of patients that we deal with every day, it would take years to show the experiences that we gain out of them. The neurosurgery program is one of the very happening program over there. So we have around 24 faculties on board with 10 operation theaters running every day, along with one gamma knife radiosurgery and the trauma center. And we do often conduct operative workshops where we have very high experienced people visiting us, performing live surgeries, exchange of knowledge keep happening. Now, this is the slide that I got from Lexel. This shows the data that the number of patients that have been treated through gamma knife in India. The data is up to 2021, which shows around 20,000. Let me tell you, till 20,000, 6,000 to 7,000 cases were solely from our institute. So that's the kind of contribution that we have. As it was being discussed yesterday and today, the benign cases definitely hold more in our data handling. So in our census, we have more of benign cases that we deal with, which includes meningioma, schwannoma, vascular. Not much of functional. Yes, metastatic also forms very few of the cases that we do. Now this is what we do at AIIMS Delhi. There's been significant progressive increase in the number of cases that we have been dealing with. And as a sole center, we have last year, since the time of treatment got down, and we have ICON and we have mass-based treatment, the number of patients that we treated were 1,000. If we go on to count the number of lesions that we treated, would almost cross 1,500. As parallel to what was there in the India census, the AIIMS Delhi census is also same. The benign tumors hold the forefront. We looked at the number of neurosurgical procedures, the operative procedures that we carry out per annum procedure, which started from around 4,000 to 5,000 major operative cases that we do every year. It is now coming down. COVID was the game changer, I guess. So post-COVID, the things have changed and people are inclining more towards a conservative approach, more towards radiosurgical approaches. So as the number of radiosurgical cases is increasing, the number of the operative cases are going down. Some of the cases that we have been doing and the publications related to that, the vascular malformations. We are doing all the three modalities of treatment. Us being neurosurgeon into gamma knife radiosurgery, we do offer them endovascular as well as surgical resection. And we know surgery is the gold standard and gives 100%, mostly around 100% cure rate. However, the number of patients that we see for AVM is huge. And you can see the number of patients per annum, this is from 2018 year, has crossed 150. So the modalities that we are using is fractionated, volume fractionation, dose fractionation, depends on the location of the tumor. We did come out with the current practices in neurosciences where we explained our way of doing it, which is almost a standard technique. The post-radiation changes that we see, there's something, the adverse radiation effect is also very close to my heart, and we do keep analyzing the cases that have not gone the way it should. So we have seen few cases where we saw the cystic changes, and so we decided that let's go ahead and do DSA for the patients. And in the DSA, where we find some residual nidus, we realize after gamma knife, if there is a residual nidus associated with cystic changes, if we go ahead and do embolization for that residual nidus, the cyst actually collapsed. So in the motor strip area, the cyst showed very good response. Even for dural AV fistulas, we have a paper published in Neurosurgery Journal, and where we did show a good result. In fact, the deep vein draining, the sparing of the deep vein drainage was one of the innovative ideas where we are using it right now, which reduces the complication of gamma knife induced radiation changes significantly. Meningioma is another condition which is very, very close to my heart. The total number of cases, if I say, is 8,700. 1/4 of the cases that we deal with is meningioma. And we see a lot of multiple meningiomas. We are looking into the genetics. We have collaborations with Germany group where we are sending our samples for analysis and the genetics both for glioma and for meningiomas. And yes, the study is ongoing because this is a very puzzling topic where we see that some of the grade 1 meningiomas misbehave. Some of the atypical meningiomas behave in a very sober fashion. So we are looking into the genetics of it, and yes, the multiple meningiomas, I see they respond so beautifully, but new lesions keep cropping up. So we are still looking into when we need to draw the line, okay, that we need to just sit and watch if they grow significantly or not. But yeah, these patients are the patients where we are always challenged, and we see good number of such cases. The follow-up is always very good, but they keep coming back with new lesions. We have seen our share of complications. This was one case imaging that was published with the patient was operated, residual meningioma was given gamma knife, and this patient had outgrowth from the external acoustic meatus of the residual and was operated again by the ENT and us together. Outcome in vestibular schwannomas, we have the first commencement of the gamma knife happened in 97. The first hospital to get was Hinduja Hospital. Unfortunately, we were the second ones because of the formalities that it takes to complete in the government setup. Yes, we have had now 25 years of experience. The follow-ups initially it was difficult to keep a track on the follow-up, but now with the current system and the electronic recording system, we have a huge data set of last, I would say, 10 years, which can be counted upon very nicely. The cystic schwannomas, the giant schwannomas, the intracanalicular schwannomas, we are into working into all of those separately. Pituitary adenomas form another good chunk of patients that we see. This is the AIMS data that we have on one of the thesis, one of our residents who did the thesis. So tumor control rate is also good, and we see a lot of functional pituitaries also. So in collaboration with the endocrine department, we decide on when and how to treat them. Most of the times, they would prefer secondary gamma knife over somatostatin analogs, basically because of the lifelong requirement of the treatment and the dose duration of the treatment, the cost of the treatment. Very good and very effective for acro, not so good for Cushing's maybe, but yes, we are doing staged gamma knife for these patients also when we want to preserve so the whole idea is to maintain the dose to the optic chiasm and the optic apparatus. Uveal melanomas, as I was discussing with one of our colleagues last time, we've seen significant number of primary melanomas in the choroidal and trigeminal neuralgias. The only functional I would say we do, we're not doing movement disorders. I got trained I came for fellowship in Cleveland. I have not seen them either do it, so that's the principle we follow. Metastasis is less, I'll tell you why. Craniopharyngiomas, yes, we are giving gamma knife to craniopharyngiomas too. There's some interesting typical cases that we have treated with gamma knife. Again, this was a published imaging that we have intracranial Langerhans cell histiocytosis with systemic involvement on medication. Did very well with gamma knife. Adverse radiation effects, we're very cognizant about it and we really work for it. So like yesterday I said, as a neurosurgeon, a threshold for surgery would be less and wherever we would want to go in. For parasite meningioma, we have seen edema, significant edema following parasite meningioma. And so now prophylactically we have shifted to giving blood thinners. We really don't know. Last 1.5 years, this has been our practice of giving blood thinner for parasite meningioma, not based on so the theory behind it is that it's a venous injury that is happening over there and we want to just maintain the circulation. Let's see the outcome of that approach. Now letting you know the differences that exist is, let's say, ignore the neurosurgical, so this is the costing that is there. This paper is also published, I think, in World Neurosurgery. So a typical gamma knife icon center in India, we work from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. And so the average, I would say, for an average institute would be around 1,000 gamma knife procedures per year. Not much differences between north and south, southern part of India. The total cost comes out to be $340,000 US. We have a principle of gamma knife for life. So my patient pays around $1,000 per treatment once in a lifetime. So if the patient comes back with recurrence or has multiple metastases and I want to stage it, the next treatment is always free of cost. The services are always free anyways for them. It's only the gamma knife that we charge for and which we're giving free for the patients. So that has been a game changer, and that is where you see the number of patients that has actually gone up. Our radiation oncology people are treating metastasis for 100 USD only. So you see why 100 versus 1000 USD. And when a patient is terminally ill, and I know the patient survival is 6 months, I'm looking at quality of life, but also at the financial aspect of it. Despite gamma knife free for life for the patient, we still in the positive balance, and we do have net revenue gain out of around 1,200 patients that we treat per annum. So it is not so bad, and it is doable for a country where we hail from. Most of my patients are uninsured, so they have to pay from their pocket. Some people who are insured and some people who come and can avail the Prime Minister's fund and the state funds are the lucky ones, but those are very few. The future, we have a huge data set. I just shared the number of patients that we're dealing with. It matches any of the world-class institute. And we also know that today is the era where we have to have the good quality data. And this creation of the gold standard medical imaging data sets, like we were discussing about Google and whichever, our institutes of Indian Institute of Sciences, the Indian Institute of Technology are also looking into it. And we have also opened our gates for them. So they can tap into our data, and they're doing that for developing the necessary AI tools. The genesis, obviously, all of us understand, was the diagnosis difficulties that we faced during the treatment with gamma knife radiosurgery, which is significant, which is detrimental for the patient. So we right now, it's the Indian study where we have multi-center studies. It's a multi-center study where we have 7 participating centers. We're looking at a huge number of patients that we will be collecting. So this may touch around 1,000 patients right now to begin with, but may go around up to 5,000 if it works up well. There are difficulties in setting up new centers. We're coming up with more and more gamma knife centers in India, and significant issues stays. So the dip in our data that you saw in the year 21-22 was because of the commissioning, not because of the COVID, we were still functioning. So to get the clearance, get the permissions, to get the work done is a task, and it's always very difficult. We have huge collaborations. All India Institute of Medical Sciences has a history of collaboration for all the big trials that have existed in the field of trauma, in the field of stroke, stitch study, crash study, factor 7 studies, ROSE trial, which didn't work out. Rescue ASDH trials, the trials that are not mentioned even in the list. We have had our alumni who've been supporting us. We have people visiting our centers. We visited, my visit to Cleveland Clinic was definitely very inspiring, and when we came back from there, even till date, I would mail Sam that is this the dose radiation plan okay, or how do we go about it? So we always try to improvise on the existing stuff. The next visit was in Dallas, which was also very good, and yes. So we're looking for future collaborations. I hope that will help the medical field. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Penny. We'll reserve questions for the very end, and hopefully have a spirited discussion. I have the pleasure of introducing Dr. Laura Faricelli as our past president. technically needs no introduction, but she's wonderful.
Thank you so much for the introduction. Change the topics and speak about advanced radiosurgery through a new initiative from ISRS board. I'd like to start with the first slide from our bylaws, current bylaws. The IS mission is to catalyze innovation in the field of focal therapies as radiosurgery, actually stereotactic radiotherapy, through multidisciplinary and inclusive education and knowledge sharing, collaborative research, and so on. So, what are the pillars now for a global development of radiosurgery and focal therapies? In my opinion, three are the main pillars: education, certification, and also reimbursement. Why? Education, because now we need a common recommendation for educations. Certification, because now we need a common quality assurance methodology and also to verify expertise of radiosurgery users. And last but not least, reimbursements. I think the common standard analysis can help us to quantify costs and also to better define responsibilities. The structure of the current structure of ISRS reflects this main goal. We have different committees with different responsibilities and different goals, with the same goals, to obtain a spread out of information for the surgery. But if you looking for a definition of this type of spread out, the most important element is the involvement of local organization. In the previous bylaw, local organizations are represented by affiliated societies, affiliated members. And as you can see, we have a lot of society from different countries, from Neuro-Oncology Society in Greece to Neurosurgery Society in Brazil, or specific radiosurgery societies in England. But now the proposed new bylaws now include local organization with a new concept, a concept of partners. Partners are members of national and regional association that could be invited to become partner members of ISRS. What is the rationale of ISRS partner organizations? We think that ISRS will experience membership as society growth through alliance with dedicated national and regional SRS Aspirity Association, our groups. Why? Because ISRS formal recognition will provide international support and allow partner organizations to advocate effectively with local policy leaders, government officials, to shape with the board of ISRS the future of our tools, our technology. The objectives. The mission is the same: to develop focal therapies, to improve patient outcome through a united community fostered by regional, tailored scientific and clinical education, by the development locally of skill and expertise, and also to facilitating collaboration, networking, and promoting best practice, a standard of quality. The method always interprofessional and multidisciplinary approach, but the action is different. The action should be shared with ISRS board member and supported by us. The structure. Partner organization has special obligation and responsibility to ISRS, including reporting of this obligation. But why? Because this initiative will ensure high level of confidence in local program and create a common strategies focused on radiosurgery development, obviously. partner organizations remain separate legal entities with their own governance and financing. An interest in this type of partnership has been expressed by Switzerland, Turkey, Australia, and also Italy. We have a strong, we are working very well among us. The core founders' representation is well represented by the three specialties, physician and physicist, radiation oncologist, and neurosurgeon. We now, as you can see from, this is a slide reporting a publication from 2013 to 2024. As you can see, we have a high development of high rated number of publications in the last 6 months of 2024. But we are also interested in developing educational program in combination with other local societies, Italian Association of Radiation Oncologists, Physicists, and Neurosurgery. But what we have decided to do is create an intergroup. And we changed the bylaws, and we are changing again from Italian chapter to Italian partners of ISRS. And the second step we made is a change of our bylaws. The next step for the next future is the creation of a task force among partners who are interested in it, to discuss and propose a common bylaws, if possible, a common educational programs with certification of ISRS expertise, and also to share some idea about criteria for partner organization acceptance, reviews, and timelines. All aligned with the strategic support of ISRS Board of Directors. So I hope to have many people starting with us with a new adventure. Thanks so much.
Thank you for that wonderful talk. I'm going to introduce Dr. Gula, who's going to share her experience with radiosurgery in Brazil. Thank you very much.
Hi, good morning, thank you. It's going to be hard to follow these two excellent presentations, but I'll do my best here with our data. So I know all of you know where Brazil is, bottom south here from this continent, but I think it's useful to keep in mind that it's the fifth largest country by area and the 7th largest population. And all the numbers that I'm going to show to you should be taken into account when we consider how large Brazil is. But there is a very uneven distribution of the population, as you can see here. Basically, half of the country remains in this. Okay, you see here, so I can point here. At the bottom, the southern portion of Brazil, so almost half in the southeast. So the GDP for Brazil is very high, even though we have a lot of issues with economics. But even though I showed to you all this huge data, how the country is large and a lot of population, only 25% of the population actually has private insurance. So it depends heavily on the government public health system, which is really bad. So when we look here at the resolutions organizing radiation therapy in the large sense and radiosurgery in Brazil, we do have obviously the official organs, and our physicist, Dr. Christian, helped me with this data on radiation oncology in general in Brazil. So as you can see here, it's underserved in total in terms of radiation therapy, and even less in radiosurgery. So you see the absolutely minority of the regions count on machines that are considered and they perform radiosurgery, and they are going to see not all of them are actually suited to be doing radiosurgery as we envision and as experts, and that's why it goes very nicely with Laura's talk and all the ISRS initiatives, because we need to raise the level of radiosurgery in the broad sense in less served areas. So the paying sources, I mean, for the public system, what they pay as reimbursement doesn't even cover the imaging cost, not to say the whole apparatus for the service. So it's really minimal. And when I show that map to you that Christian helped me with, we were talking basically about Linux. And as you see here, less than 30% of the linear accelerators in Brazil perform radiosurgery. And among those 27% that perform, less than 2% of the time they perform radiosurgery. So it's a really snowball, right? They don't want to invest because it's too expensive, and even those who are kind of set to do it, they underutilize. So that's the flow and the participation of neurosurgeons in radiosurgery in Brazil. It's still really minimal. We have been doing a lot of work aiming to improve that. And then we know what happens when you don't have the proper machine. Majority of the centers, they have only translational corrections, they don't have rotational corrections, so every time you're not sure, you increase the margin. Then you don't have verification and correction of the intra-treatment positioning, so if you don't have it, what you do, you increase the margin. And then you blow up the definition of radiosurgery, because radiosurgery is sub-millimetric precision and accuracy. So these numbers for this volume of linear accelerators in Brazil, they are truly not doing radiosurgery, even though it's called radiosurgery. Now, we do have some islands there. We do have, currently we have 4 gamma knife centers in Brazil. As you can see here, one in São Paulo, Rio de Janeiro, Paraná, and in the Federal District that's located within the Goiás state. Only the Rio de Janeiro one is in the public health system. All the other 3 are in the private system, and one CyberKnife that's also located in São Paulo. So there is a lot of concentration in the southern portion of Brazil, but that's where the money is, where the largest population is. And then I asked the data for a LINAC center that really is equipped to do radiosurgery as we wanted. It's actually the only certified center in Brazil. That's the Hospital Real Português in Recife, Pernambuco, in the northeastern coast. And they do dedicate the time and the effort to do first level radiosurgery there. So these are the specifications of the devices and that they have, the device that they have there, and in the correction for positioning. Now, let's look at the results in terms of volume that we see in the gamma knife centers. As you know, Antonio and I, we work in 2 gamma knife centers in Brazil. The one in São Paulo, that's the second eldest one in Brazil, and the one in Brasilia that has been on for only 4 years. And then the Brain Institute is in Rio de Janeiro. That's the one that actually takes care of the public health system, and you can see how obvious this is by the number of patients treated per year in each machine. And then the gamma knife in Curitiba. So my 2 colleagues from Curitiba and from Rio, they were kind enough to share the data, so we could have a little bit more comparison grounds here. And the linear accelerators from these institutions where we work are labeled here. These are the CyberKnife cases in green. And the Hospital Real Português, that's the one we don't work directly, even though our first fellow in Brazil is the neurosurgeon there, and we do actually go to their meetings every year. So As you can see here, the number of cases and the mean number of cases treated per year is very low, considering the size of the population. And that's a matter of access to the treatment. So who pays for it, and knowledge about the patients, about referrals, and these are my collaborators here, the neurosurgeons that helped me out, and the chief of radiation oncology at Redditor that was kind enough to share the data with us to help us with this. So what is nice actually to look at this is that when you have a linear accelerator center that is really committed to do radiosurgery, you can actually get to numbers that are close by a gamma knife center in terms of volume of radiosurgery. Obviously, these numbers are very, very small, but for the size of the country. But it shows that there is a ceiling effect, no matter the region of the country where you are, and that's not because of the technology, that's because of the economic constraints and access to the therapy. Now, if we look at the breakdown of the cases, keeping in mind the type of the services, like in São Paulo, let me know if I run out of time, that I can speed up, okay. And then when we look at the gamma knife at H-core, that's the second gamma knife in Brazil, the first gamma knife that Antonio and I work with. We do see a breakdown where majority of the cases are actually benign, and then 12% are functional and 26% malignant, but we don't have a strong oncology there. So the malignant cases really are fed by the oncologists. These 10 neurosurgeons, in fact, there are 3. They did this politics of open the service and then trying to accrue neurosurgeons that would just come there and screw the frame, and obviously it does not succeed. That's not how you accrue neurosurgery participation. You gotta have people that are really involved and committed. So this is the gamma knife in Brasilia. Now it's a different setting. They have a very strong oncological national program there. So, but in here we have 10 neurosurgeons, but 8 are from our team, and these are dedicated people. They all have fellowship in radiosurgery. They have their practice tailored to this. Obviously, we all operate on tumors, but we don't stay there looking at them growing, so we keep taking care of these patients. And out of this, we were able actually to get half the equal volume, competing with the volume produced by the oncology in general. And then we keep the majority of the cases from the functional cases. Usually we don't have a large volume as we would like to, but it's mainly accessibility to the system. Now, when we look in Curitiba, that's the first gamma knife in Brazil. That's in a neurosurgery private institute. So only neurosurgeons, and they have a private investor for the machine, but they owe the hospital. They do over 1,200 craniotomies per tumor per year. And there are 2 dedicated neurosurgeons there, 1 radiation oncologist, 1 medical physicist. And when you look at the breakdown of the indications, they have actually a balance between malignant and benign, but by the amount of craniotomies they perform for tumors, they undertreat these patients, but it's basically a gamma knife for a neurosurgery institute. What about the cyberknife in São Paulo? Very, very few cases that we have been able to treat, and I'm going to show to you why in the next slide. But we have a balance between malignant and benign, considering that neurosurgeons basically bring these cases and oncologists refer the malignant ones. Again, it's a strong oncology program there. But look at this. Who is the main source for the cyberknife in Brazil? That's the reason why we have very few cases in 4 years. Majority of them, 70%, pay privately, and that's expensive for them. And this, where the insurance, the private insurance paid, they are all lawsuits. So, I mean, 1 or 2 cases that they really pay out of pocket, but I'm sorry. that they did come up, they did a approval before litigation. So that's why it's very hard to ramp up a program with these economical constraints in terms of volume. But majority of the cases are actually made by mask. If you look at the tubing that it's there, then it's a regular payment schedule, and the majority of the cases are also treated with single dose. And when we look at the gamma knife icon in Brasilia, we do see that we have roughly half frame and mask. I was actually talking to Mike Schulder in Brazil last week, and he was saying how he moved towards mask for all the indications. We still keep AVMs and functional, some acoustics in young people that want to preserve hearing, all the pituitary regions that we want to give high dose for the close to the apparatus. So we still keep the frame for all these indications there. And this is from the Hospital Real Português in Recife. They also have a majority of malignant cases, but 30% steady participation on benign. Now, we do have the limitations. It's painful to say that, but we know that we could be better, economically speaking, but corruption is a problem. That's why we have these awful situations here, and people don't have access, they don't have education to get the best treatment. So, other limitations, that's the business model for the multidisciplinarity for truth. Everybody talks, it's politically correct to talk about it, but very few centers really implement this. And this is not only Brazil. Even in the North Hemisphere, where everything is very set up, we have these challenges. So in Brazil, it's even worse because there is no revenue system outlined for the neurosurgeon participation. The reimbursements are very dismal in the public health system and education in radiosurgery. But if there are limitations, we need to come up with solutions. So Antonio, when he was in the Brazilian Neurosurgery Society, he was the director of the radiosurgery program. He wrote a codification to justify the neurosurgeon's participation that was approved by the Brazilian Medical Council. But there was some prevention from the radiation oncologist, so it's still a working in progress. And then he had the idea to put all neurosurgeons together into the Neurosapiens group. And education, we both have been personally involved with a broad range of education in the Brazilian meetings, functional neurosurgery, radiosurgery meetings, also during Laura's presidency at the ISRS, and now during Mark's presidency, I have had a lot of support to do these initiatives in Latin America as a whole, as the entire ISRS, the new education committee that we are going to have here at the ISRS. So we need to educate, and then we need to stimulate and allow these neurosurgeons that are interested in the technique to participate and get paid for this. And I know I'm running out of time, but just to give an idea of the Neurosapiens, that was Antonio's vision. It was funded in 2020. The original idea was just to get together all the former fellows and have an internal networking in the country. But actually it attracted attention from other specialties, and now we have neurologists, psychiatrists, neuropsychologists, orthopedic surgeons, neuroradiologists, radiation oncologists, and we are present in 16 out of the 27 Brazilian states so far. And that's how we drain the cases to Brasilia, for instance. These are the sources for all the cases. These are the team people that work with us. So, I mean, in conclusion, Brazil has a lot of resources. It's the eternal country of the future. Hopefully one day we will get to the future. But the forecasts for the Brazilian revenue are optimistic despite all this economic context that we go. And I thought it was very nice to see this written in an economy paper. So it is the largest economy in Latin America and one of the largest economies in the world. But they say that Brazilians still have faith in the future, in the country's future. So maybe we are gonna win another World Cup as well, who knows, right? So thank you very much for this, and special thanks for these two people who helped me a lot. They're very
All right, so I'm going to open it up to questions and invite the speakers to potentially even come up or at least stand next to a microphone to be able to address any questions. So I'm going to open it up to the group. Anyone has any questions? Yeah, either one.
Good afternoon, Doctora Dolores de la Mata. I'm from Spain but working in Mexico. I would like to congratulate about all these extra efforts, not only from ISRS association, also for India and Brazil, that I think are the most populated countries with a lot of difficulties, not only education and also the payment. I would like to ask you about how do you feel, Alessandra, about after the ISRS program, education program, online webinar. I think it was around 200 people connected every Saturday. How could we measure the impact of this education? Because I think we are doing a lot of free online training, but I don't know at the end of the day how many of these people, physicists and radiation oncologists, are taking advantage of that. And from the presenter of India, how could you convince people to do one cell line for free? Because it's going to be a perfect solution for us. And I think it's one of the tricky points in the low and middle income countries. Thank you very much.
I think in terms of education, we need to leverage interest in all the different levels. So just to draw attention and to get people to hear about it, for instance, we have the National Residence Course in the Neurosurgery Society, and we are fighting to have more and more lectures and questions, so they understand it's important. So I think the webinars, and we did get almost 3,000 people from Latin America watching the series at the time, so that's definitely high impact. Now, how many of those really converted in there? I don't know. We didn't measure. It might be interesting maybe for ISRS if it's possible to keep track of this. But definitely it was something that wasn't there. So I'm sure it was positive. Now, for the programs, we try to invite the residents. We open the circle. We do have fellows every year. For 7 years now, but we are open to the universities, like I go and give the talks there, Antonio as well, to get them interested. So I think that's a slow process. For the radiation oncologists, we have outstanding people there that are so good and they really want to work together. Some, they feel they don't need the neurosurgeon presence, and then there is not much you can do because we don't own the machines, but you need to find your niche, right, and go working. But I think for the neurosurgeons, if we don't create this bed where they can actually get their academic interest, but then they are able to treat their cases no matter where they are. If we don't do that, it's gonna die because they're gonna watch a lecture, oh, this is great treatment, but it's not my reality. So that's basically what it is.
Yeah, so I agree with Alessandra that the webinars, the discussions should continue. I'm also not sure of the impact the way you're saying, because we call it a tsunami of webinars. So almost every weekend we have one webinar being organized by whichever society. So I think I would prefer to have, like if I wanted to understand gamma knife or stereotactic radiosurgery for that matter, I would prefer to go visit the center and see the impact. And then, only then I would believe for that, this is going to change my patient's outcome. As a physician, if I have to convince a physician, I would want them to come over, see it for themselves, and then believe it. As for Gamma Knife for Life, somehow we were forced to do it because ultimately any technology, however good it may be, if it doesn't translate into clinical utility for the local body, it doesn't help. So it has to go that ways, and it has worked out because I get paid less, my colleagues get paid less, we save money and we use it. But that's how it has to go for a little longer while for now, until we reach the level we want to. So, but that works. So if people want to go for it, Gamma Knife for Life, I think low middle income countries, they should actually go for it. Because we have the fixed price for all the government institute, the charges are same, $1,000 per patient. Gamma Knife for Life free is only AIMS concept, it doesn't hold true for other, so we have not been able to convince them either to go for it, but I think they should, it's a doable thing. Thank you.
Any other questions? So I kind of have a question for the group. I was sitting on a committee that was looking specifically at sub-Saharan Africa and radiation and radiosurgery, and I was kind of astounded by the numbers. So, like for instance, in our small Northeast Ohio city, Cleveland, it's a small city, it's not a big city, we probably have about a population of about 5 million. But Nigeria, for instance, has a population of 200 million, and the number of linear accelerators in our city is equal to the number of linear accelerators in the entire country. So how would anyone propose developing radiosurgery in a country or even a continent like that when they just barely have the means to even just take care of just with conventional radiation? And we'll open it up to either one of you in terms of your thoughts.
No, please.
I totally agree with you, and that's a huge problem when you get out of the strip, just like Las Vegas strip. When you get out, United States, Europe, Japan, and Canada. Even though that's true, I don't think we should always leverage by the lower. So they need general radiation, they do, but you should, since the beginning, foster the, radiosurgery as well. Otherwise, we would just be treating like verminoses, right, in this country. No surgery would be performed because they die from malnutrition. So we need to build up excellency centers, few of them that could train, and I don't know which kind of international initiative could help them, because for sure they will not come up with the funding enough for that. And also give away teaching, experience, tutoring, mentoring, but also funding.
You want me to make a small comment on that? I think that one of the problems that we are facing with radiosurgery is that it's a high technology that you cannot put just everywhere. That doesn't mean it doesn't have to go there, but you cannot put it everywhere. I remember there was some initiative from the World Federation of Neurosurgery for countries that could not afford buying microscope, buying micro instruments, and they made deal with companies like Zeiss for the microscope and microsurgery instrument to create sets or low-price microscope, very basic, that you could only sell in countries that could not afford to buy, the big fancy microscope or QSA or other things like that. For many years I thought, could we do the same thing with radiosurgery? But how could you build a low-level, less expensive radiosurgery equipment that you could put in Nigeria, but you cannot sell it to the Swiss people because they were able to afford for the big one. So we have a problem. I mean, we have this problem is that we have technology that you cannot make simpler or and you cannot afford to sell it to the countries like that, which you can do with other things in surgery and in neurosurgery. Maybe one way, and just giving an idea about what Alexandra said, is that maybe, and the ISRS or other organizations, the World Health or whatever, could help with that, is to create some reference center where patient can be referred, because that's the advantage of radiosurgery as opposed to microsurgery, is that it's an ambulatory procedure. So of course, patient can travel, but they can go on the same day and then go home. So somehow, grouping patient in a reference center somewhere in a country like that is possible, but then somebody has to take the lead and do it. So that might be the way forward.
Yeah, I'd probably invite any vendors to try to figure out a way to make these things a lot cheaper. It's really expensive technology.
Yeah, exactly.
And
And you have to rely on power supply and everything I remember I had a discussion, just to give you an example, I had a discussion with one neurosurgeon from the World Health Organization traveling in Africa, and the end point of their visit was to decide how many iPhones do you need in the surgery room so that if the power goes down, you have enough light to continue the surgery. So, we're not talking about running a Linac, we're just talking about having lights in the surgery room. And they ended up that, if you have enough people with an iPhone in the room, even if the power supply stops, you can continue the surgery. It's as simple as that.
Yeah.
It's actually more of a comment. I think this is an important problem for the whole world, maybe even the United States. As you said, some places don't have radiosurgery, even in this country. But when we went to Brazil, this is about 10 years ago, the government bought 80 Linacs. I went to the government and called them and said, here, 2 or 3 good Linacs that we can do radiosurgery. Well, no, we first, what Alessandra said, we have to take care of the people with cancer, which I agree, right? Our job is 3% of the cancer, and much less than that, probably. So doesn't make it, you cannot convince government people because our 3% doesn't vote. So that's one of the reasons that, but it really doesn't make sense. Well, they bought 80 Linacs, and there was a bid between Variant and Elect at that time, and Variant gave the 80 Linacs if it gave sold if Variant built a manufacturer in Brazil. So they built their mountain manufacturer, and okay, now we have 80 Linacs. In this 10 years, they could put 4 spread in the country. Why? Because there's no educated people to run and to put it together. So that's the main issue that I want to make here is the society, the Brazilian Society, the World Federation, if we could come up with training for 1 person a year or 2 persons a year that can do this technology. And indeed, we don't need 100 machines throughout Brazil right now, but we need a place where we can concentrate the patients, and that's what we're doing. I think you saw that we're carrying people from all over the country to one gamma knife in the middle of the country. Why? It's where there are more flights. Flights to the capital are a lot of flights. All of them are direct. Indeed, the patient comes, does the treatment, and goes back home. The consultations nowadays are all through the telemedicine, so we can see the patients before and treat the patients. So we are increasing that referral more and more, but we need more centers than only one, right? We need centers that the government will pay for, centers that the private institutions will pay for, and that's what we're trying to find now.
Thanks, Antonio. Dr. Wilbo, last question. Yeah.
There's just a brief comment. This question has baffled me over the years, and why there are public centers with radiosurgery all over the world, and even private, that handle 1,000, 1,000, 2,000. But then you see public institutions that have cybernetics. I've seen that handle 60 patients a year. So we're thinking about the technology, and in most of these countries where you have violent corruption, you know, just it gets more money stolen in an hour probably than what the cost of the machine is. So I don't think that it's a question of cost of the machine. I think that if you follow the money, you will find the reason why you have so few referrals in countries such as South Korea. And there is a divorce between radiation oncologists and neurosurgeons that we have to face. And we have to understand why that divorce is there. And once we fix that divorce, I think that we can start changing things. But I think that we have to look at that program, that problem first, before going into putting more machines, is fixing the relationship between radiation oncologists and neurosurgeons.
If I may counterpart, I think if we need to solve that issue before we build up centers in education, that's going to take decades. I think we need to find, the small solutions, local solutions, find the right people and get started. Otherwise, because I think the reimbursement issue is going to be solved when we build up volume enough to justify a change in the politics. But I don't think the change in the politics will come first. I don't know. That's my opinion. Unfortunately.
All right, we'll conclude this session. Thank you, everyone.